الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Welcome to all of you. We'll do the formal introductions soon, but we'll start off with a recitation of the Holy Quran by Maulana Shukran.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فابين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. ليعذب الله المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات ويتوب الله على المؤمنين والمؤمنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والنجم إذا هوى ما ضل صاحبكم وما غوى وما ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي يوحى. علمه شديد القوى ذو مرة فاستوى وهو بالأفق الأعلى. ثم دنا فتدلى فكان قاب قوسين أو أدنى. فأوحى إلى عبده ما أوحى. ما كذب الفؤاد ما رأى ولقد رآه نزلة أخرى عند سدرة منتهى. عندها جنة المأوى إذ يغشى السدرة ما يغشى. ما زاغ البصر وما طغى. لقد رأى من آيات ربه الكبرى. أفرأيتم اللات والعزى ومناة الثالثة الأخرى. ألكم الذكر وله الأنثى. تلك إذا قسمة ضيزى. إن هي إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن يتبعون إلا الظن وما تهوى الأنفس ولقد جاءهم من ربهم الهدى أم للإنسان ما تمنى فلله الآخرة والأولى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah Maulana for a beautiful recitation. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you, particularly the Seppe family, the family of Imam Essa Al-Seppe, and all the others that are here representing the organizations. I know it's difficult for you to give up a Saturday afternoon, but we are really grateful that you are here today. On behalf of Islamic Forum and Awqaf South Africa, a warm welcome to you. The introduction to the program will be done by Brother Zafar Ahmad. Most of you know him, the principal of Al-Falah School. He's also the local representative of Awqaf South Africa, and he will speak for a few minutes, just an introductory remark for the start of the program. Brother Zafar.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise belongs to Allah, the especially merciful, the exceptionally merciful Lord of the worlds, Master of the Day of Judgment, to whom is our ultimate return. Our choicest salutations, durood and salam, on the best of Allah's creation, most eloquent in speech, the most noble in character, the most dignified in status, the perfect example for all of humanity, and indeed a mercy to all of mankind, our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Master of Ceremonies, respected guests, I'm very pleased to be part of this important occasion where we launch a book to celebrate the life and work of Imam Isa Al-Seppe and for the support your presence provides for us today. My name is Zafar Ahmad. As was said, I'm the principal of Al-Falah College, but I'm here today because I'm the Deputy CEO of Awqaf South Africa, and together with Islamic Forum, we are hosting this particular event, and Awqaf South Africa commissioned the writing of this book as part of one of the programs we do. I just want to take a few minutes to shine a light on Awqaf South Africa. For those of you that may not be too familiar with Awqaf South Africa, we're an organization that was established in the year 2000, and the primary responsibility or purpose of this was to create a Waqf institution in this country where people's contributions are collected and collectively invested in investments that yield a result or an investment or a return, and those investments and returns are used for downstream spends and charitable causes. In other words, it's a gift that keeps on giving. Your single contribution to Awqaf is never spent, ever. That money is kept in perpetuity in an investment. The returns from those funds are used for downstream spend. I use this orange as an example. If we opened it up, we'd be able to count the seeds in this orange. But if we plant a seed in the ground, you'd never be able to count the oranges that will come out of that one seed. And this is the power of Waqf, is that you give the investment or the contribution, it's invested, and in perpetuity, the returns of that investment keeps on providing charitable causes, mashallah. So it's a wonderful opportunity and a very benevolent way of giving. Now, for this particular project and why we're here today, one of the many projects that Awqaf South Africa has under its belt is called the Leaders and Legacy project. We have a special waqf for this, and the returns from that waqf are used to support the writing of books like this one here we are here to celebrate today. And the reason for this waqf fund and the purpose of this is, you see, if we don't record the contribution of our Muslim contribution to South Africa, our own heroes, these things will get lost in a few years' time. And so the stories and the journey of all of our heroes are recorded through this project. And over the time, we've published books on the life of Ram Saluji in the form of Life and Social Justice, the Ram Saluji biography, authored by Harun Aziz. We wrote a book from the Spice Islands to Cape Town, The Life and Times of Tuan Guru by Shafiq Moten. This book, by the way, is a bestseller and it's been through its third publication now, edition. The Compassionate Healer, the biography of Dr. Isub Jasad by Harun Aziz. In Pursuit of Dignity, the Life and Times of Enver Surti. And now we honored today to share with you the release of the latest in the series, The Life and Times of Imam Essa Al-Seppe, authored by Professor Dangor. It's just another one of those books in the long string of books that we wish to publish to maintain and keep alive the story of the legacies of our local heroes. I thank you very much for your participation today, and I'd like to thank all of you for being here and showing support to this. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Zafar. I remember our brother Imam Essa Al-Seppe. I first met him in 1984, and I'm sure many of you were at the Islamic Tarbiyah program of the Muslim Youth Movement. It was in Indonesia, and our guests were probably one of the most powerful scholars that we've had in our programs, Professor Khurshid Ahmad and Ustad Quram Murad. And I still remember Imam Essa Al-Seppe walking in with his turban. He was a very young man at that time. I don't think he was married. And that was our first encounter. I didn't know who he was. And of course, we made introductions. And then he moved to Durban and he became involved in the Muslim Youth Movement and many other organizations which we hear about today. So he played a very significant role in the development, particularly of the emerging Muslim community. And that's what we hear about today, to celebrate his life, to celebrate the launch of the book, which I hope most of you will read and learn from and use it as an example and as a kind of inspiration to continue his legacy. Our first speaker today is Sheikh Malik Arafat. He is unable to be here, so it's going to be a video message that he's pre-recorded for us. So he's got a few minutes. Each speaker will speak for maximum 5 minutes, and you will be warned at 4 minutes that you've got 1 minute left. So please, all the speakers, try and stick to your time. It's a long program. We intend finishing by 4 o'clock. Of course, we always provide refreshments. So our first speaker is Sheikh Malik Arafat.
Bismillah. My name is Malik Arafat. It's a great pleasure for me to be having been given this opportunity to talk about Marhum Imam Isa Al-Seppe. Great man he was. Some of us were really privileged to have met him. At the time when we met him, very few of us at the time who really had the guts and the capacity, if I may, to stand up to the challenges of apartheid, and at the same time being new Muslims, also the challenges of being accepted in Muslim circles. He was the type of man that really had a vision and, had aspired as well to elevate the Africans, in particular, Muslims as well, as regards the establishment of Islam in this country, assisting with the struggle to uplift the well-being of our people across the country. And therefore, because of that, for him, Islam was really not just a religious obligation of, 5 prayers a day and that type of thing. He was a man that interpreted Islam as being a liberation or liberating force, and an ideology to be spread among the people to give people hope. And it's for that reason that with whatever organizations that he became part of, he never lost the moment to do da'wah. He never lost a moment to be actively involved with different political formations at the time, and whenever we were together, he was the type of man that could always be inspiring us to, and make sure that the thing is established. And also what is very important for us is that, he really understood the mind of the African. Because of his Khoi and African heritage, he understood that as Africans we had lost the land, we had lost legacies, etc., to white privilege, And for him, Islam really was that important that, it probably would have helped us or should help us to reestablish that. Because, a people who don't have access to land will always be serving others. And really, this has been really our struggle. And, it's so important that he was able to break barriers in terms of moving across racial lines, dealing with the hardships involved with that, working between South Africa and Namibia at the time, when apartheid was very, very strong and powerful, and, we dealt with having to, the difficulties of being spied upon and, apartheid agents on our backs at all times. And, he was one person that, regardless of all that, he just kept his head down and moved forward and did his work. We need more of such men and women today, more than before, in fact, because with the dawn of democracy, Muslims have had, a situation where now the playing fields are almost level. We're in a position where we can assert ourselves even better than at the time of apartheid. The repression is not as hard as it was at the time. Some people say that the liberal, constitution assists Muslims. I agree with that, but to a certain extent. But my fear, and probably he would also have the same fear, was that because of this liberal constitution that we live under, there is a tendency to be relaxed and think that, things will happen on their own. No, it cannot be that. We really have to stand up and establish the deen. It's imperative and important for us to do that. For some of us, when we accepted Islam, we made the Shahada, and the Shahada is a declaration, but it's also a contract between ourselves and Allah. But we'll only worship one Allah, Him alone, and nothing else. So we should not be worshipping our achievements. We should not be worshipping our, whatever we have acquired, whether in knowledge or in material, whatever it is. All of those things are necessary tools for us to be able to worship Allah. And one of the most important principles here is that the worshipping of Allah means the establishment of the deen. In this part of the world, it is possible for us. Africa has not been, Southern Africa in particular, has not been tested, in terms of the establishment of the deen or Islam becoming a vehicle of change. In the same way as capitalism or socialism was a rallying ideology for the establishment of change in this country, I think all of us must really realize that Islam should be used as an ideology of change. It must be used as a rallying call, like the Adhan is a call to prayer and success. And subhanAllah, may Allah make it easy for all of us. that he makes it easy for us that we establish the deen and understand it for what it is. Jazakallah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we are very privileged today to have Sister Fazila. She's the wife of Imam Essa Al-Seppe, and she's going to read us a poem that's written to his memory.
As-Salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sure, this is difficult. I spoke about this with Ibrahim Buffalo 22 years ago. I think it was June that year. And I was just speaking to him, little knowing that he's writing this down, And when I gave you all the documents, I didn't even know that this was in one of the Al-Kalam. So difficult for me to, but inshallah, I'll try. Just bear with me. I'll never stop celebrating you. I see you in Farihan's smiling face. I see your lips in Fatima, your eyes in Bakhita's eyes, so sharp. Ashad and Shamil spot your happy face, so full of confidence, determination, and honor. You loved friends and brothers in faith for Allah's sake. You never ever abandoned or forsake them, and was always forgiving and tolerant towards others, and met them with a smile and a sincere smiling face. You had a natural inclination towards kindness and faithfulness. I will never stop celebrating you. You were generous, preferred others above yourself. You never broke promises. You prayed for others in their absence. This is why I will never stop celebrating you. You held ties of kinship even for relatives not Muslim. You fully understood the meaning of upholding kinship ties, even to families who failed to do so. This is why I will never stop celebrating your life. You characterize Haya, gentle towards people, compassionate and merciful. You were tolerant and forgiving. Easygoing to business dealings, you were of cheerful character, had a good sense of humor and patience. I never heard you curse nor falsely accuse anyone of fasikh or kufr. You were modest and discreet, never interfered in things not concerning you. This is why I will celebrate you even more. You avoided giving false statement and suspicions. You kept secrets and never was arrogant and made fun of anyone. You respected elders, mixed with people of noble character. Your stance for the benefit for the people to protect them from harm and strive to reconcile Muslims. You called people to the truth with wisdom and eloquence. This is why I will never stop celebrating you. Shukran and thanks to Awqaf South Africa, also to Islamic Forum, and all the other organizations. A special thanks go out to my friend, sister, Arshad Manjra, Mariam Amra, Saidun Nisa, Betty, my neighbor from Namibia, my sisters, my children, my girls. And it was hard work, Suleman. You know what we strived for. And I'd like to thank everybody who's attended here today, my sisters, my family, and I blessed all of you. And most of all, last but not least, I'd like to thank myself. I never thought I could pull this through. Shukran Suleman Dangor. May Allah increase you and the Islamic Forum family and every other organization that was there from the day I married Isa. In fact, Yusef Osman and his wife, Razia, was there for my proposal up till this day. They are just a phone call away. I don't know how much to thank who, but you are collective. Please accept my gratitude and my thanks. Shukran. Salam alaikum.
Jazakallah for that very moving tribute. And I think that's really an appropriate and apt way to start the program. Our first speaker for today doesn't seem to be here, Dr. Ghulam Hussain. So that's fine. So I'll add on a minute for the rest of the speakers. Our next speaker is Dr. Yusef Osman. He's also been a stalwart of the Islamic movement, has been involved in MYM and particularly the IDM. He had a very close relationship with Imam Essa Al-Seppe, and I'm going to ask him to speak for 5 to 6 minutes.
نحمده ونصلي على الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I think I'd like to thank Awqaf for this effort that they have, because it's true, if we don't remember our heroes, who is going to? And if we don't record our history, it will never be remembered. So Islamic Forum, Awqaf, and Suleman Dangor, even if we wish it so, it was not people like you who's going to go and do all this work, because it takes a lot of effort to do this. And I'd like to, thank you all for this. With regard to Imam Seppe, yes, I know him from a long time ago, before he was married. And when you could reach my age now, I just turned 70, so I had to verify this fact. I said, for Auntie Fazila, is it really? I mean, because we went to propose for Imam Isa to move in Mubeni to Auntie Fazila's auntie's house. And it was Anisa, Ibrahim Dada's wife, Ibrahim Dada, my wife, and myself. We went to Mubeni to actually do the proposal. And I remember the groom's house was 33 Granada Street in Shalcross. Imam had to dress up there and change there. And from there, we went to Mariam Hill for the wedding. So my relationship with Imam Isa is well before you all were born, girls. And alhamdulillah, he's got a lovely family. There's Shamil, Fatima, who's a chef. She's done a Christina Martin's culinary course over there. Bakita, who's a pharmacy assistant. And I hope Farian is sitting in Doha at the moment as a teacher. And I hope she's watching. She asked for the link to watch this live. Is there a link going on? Okay. So inshallah, she would be viewing this from Doha, and she's a teacher over there. So alhamdulillah, the family has done well. And may Allah give them barakah and blessings. And I always think that this blessing and barakah they have is because of Imam. We did not know Auntie Fazila and her family. We knew Imam Isa. And it was because of him, this barakah is there. And Imam Isa had a unique quality which very few Muslims have, is that he read. I think less than 1% of us read. He was an avid reader. But there was a difference in his readership. People can become readers and become scholars and sit in ivory towers. And this is what I would like to say, that he was a free thinker, a pragmatic activist, a prolific writer. The one thing I know about Imam Isa, he would not have made it to medical school. His writing was too neat. They don't admit you if your writing is so neat. He was a critical scholar, but he did not divorce his relationship between religious work and social activism. For a person to be involved as an imam, to give a khutbah, then to be involved with Sanko, to be involved in interfaith organizations, to involve with the WCRP, NGOs, to be involved with the South African Communist Party, to be involved with the Black Consciousness Movement, to be involved with IDM, MYM, WAMI, you know, and I mean, even I saw in the messages that even he was invited by Maulana Yunus Patel to join one of the workshops. So he was able to blend with all the groupings, and he was able to build communities. And that's a rare quality we have today. To have everyone today wants to just throw you a label and throw you out of the fold of Islam. We all are trying to bring people to Muslims, but the rest of the guys are trying to take you out of the fold of Islam. He was always able to bring not only people to Islam, but able to bring communities together. He was an important bridge. I think his life proved that. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah grant him the highest stages in Jannah, inshallah, and bless his family. And I hope we take lessons from it. I would like to encourage you all to buy the book so that you can see some of the things that he has done. You can see his scholarship and his activism, which, alhamdulillah, Suleman, you've summarized and presented very well in his book. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah, Yusuf, for those very apt words. I think very well put. And I think from many of us in the movement, you probably were the closest to him. Our next speaker is from WAMI. On behalf of WAMI, is Rashad Amra. Now, Rashad's father, Marhum Muhammad Amra, was a founder member of WAMI, as well as the Islamic Forum, a stalwart of the Muslim youth movement. Also had a very close association with Imam Essa Al-Seppe. So really, Rashad is going to do it on behalf of his father today. This close relationship and association that Imam Seppe had with the Amra family, as well as with the different organizations that Muhammad was involved with.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So last week, Saturday, I was driving in over here and Prof. Dangor saw me and he grabbed me and he said, you need to speak next week. So that's why I'm speaking now. So obviously, I mean, my knowledge of Imam Al-Seppe was only over 2 or 3 years when I was in high school and he was with WAMI. But it's also a very interesting reflection. When I saw the photo, I was like, he's strikingly handsome. He could have been like on the cast of Bad Boys alongside Will Smith. And it's also a reflection like we all age. We forget how good looking people were once upon a time and how quickly the passage of time moves. So Bismillah. What I'm going to say now, obviously my father is left about 2.5 years ago. So what I've gleaned from speaking to Haji Bai and Mullah in the back over there, my mother, and some anecdotes from Sister Zaytun, who was the administrator and the secretary and the coordinator when Imam worked with my father at WAMI. So when he joins WAMI, so I've got some glimpses and some of my own personal glimpses into him. When I first met Imam Seppe, given his features and he used to wear the Sudanese thobe and he had the Sudanese type of imama, and I thought he was a Sudanese sheikh based on his style and his interaction with Latif Fazila. So that's my first impression of him. But he comes into WAMI around the late 90s, early 2000s, when South Africa is transitioning from democracy to post-democracy. The coal aid has been drunk by the ANC. The black Muslim experience is very different. Historically, the black Muslims are very marginalized. Islamic work is dominated by Indians and Cape Malays. Blacks are on the periphery. The traditional fraternity is waking up to the fact that the society has changed. Islamic work is from activist base to becoming more commercialized, but that transition is happening. And so there's all of these multiple plates moving in the South African strata. So Imam's tenure is marked by unwavering commitment to dawah work. So both Sister Zaytun and Haji Bai noted that his focus was purely dawah. In the short space of time when he was with WAMI, he just ran dawah workshops. The first one was held here. Then there was one in Winkelspruit, there was Ladysmith, there was Escort, there was Hazelmere. There was one in Durban CBD over a short space of time. And he had this incredible ability to bring people together across all the walks of life. Haji Bai noted that he was running to the airport, picking people up. Back then it was the old Louis Botha airport by Sipingo. And the diversity of people Imam was involved in say something about his ability to network and across the board, despite him being from SADC and not South Africa. And so right now we have a lot of nativist currents in our political discourse, like you're from Zimbabwe or from Mozambique or you're from Botswana. He being from SADC but not from South Africa, so not natively South African, there weren't these issues over here. And so in that sense, it was really wonderful to hear these things. Then there was also some discussion on his personal virtues. So it's very unpopular nowadays to talk about being zuhud or being austere or being ascetic, because the wealth of the world has come into the Muslim community. But the Prophet ﷺ sunnah is the one of austerity, of renunciation. And Imam had that, and he left very little, if anything. He was penniless, and in his passing, and he never really was attracted to the things of this world. Haji Bhai noted that every morning when they would go into the office, this was on Randall's Road by Shifa Hospital, he was immersed in work. So he wasn't wasting time, he wasn't doing anything trivial. He was deeply committed to what he did. Haji Bhai also notes in this what is very important, and his testimony to his family, in particular his wife, is you can't do what you do as Imam Essa Al-Seppe unless you have a supportive family structure. So it's also tribute to the role of the spouse and the family in his life of commitment. He had a very diverse network, I've noted that, and he took even the small sunnah seriously. So there's a tendency for modern intellectuals to dismiss the literal small sunnahs, but even simple things like how you clip your nails and discard of it in the Shafi fiqh is something he took seriously. So he had the wara across the board without any exaggeration. Last anecdote from Haji Bhai on this was when he took ill, and Haji Bhai and them were on a workshop. There's ikhtilaf where there was escort ladysmith, but we'll say it was somewhere in Natal, and he had to come back. And he was admitted to hospital. It was always a continuous flow of people coming to visit him, which says a lot about you and your contribution to people and the people's hearts you touched. So it's not purely an obituary or a tribute, but also a cause of reflection or source of reflection, a moment of reflection for us as a Muslim community and the inheritors of the Islamic movement in this country. And so we hope that reflecting on this allows us to rekindle some of that zeal and commitment that these past individuals had. With that, we pray for his soul to be in the highest levels of Jannah. He's buried in Browns Avenue, not too far from here. So if you have time afterwards, it's as you enter on the left-hand side. I think it's the second row on the left. It should be marked. It's very close to the entrance. So Jazakallah khair for the opportunity, and to Awqaf again. And if Awqaf can do something on a more, I know Prof. Dangor has done some work, but similar to how you've done work on Tuan Guru, another piece on Sufi Sahib would be in order, if I may use this opportunity. Shukran jazilan. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Rashad. I must thank the speakers for being so succinct and on point and on time. I see Dr. Ghulam Hussain has arrived. He's hiding there. So Dr. Ghulam Hussain is also a stalwart of the community, involved in many Muslim organizations, founder of the Islamic Medical Association, founder of As-Salam Educational Institute, where Imam Seppe studied. Many As-Salam students are here today. So you'll be proud to know that one of your alumni is being honored today, and his life is being celebrated. So Dr. Ghulam will speak briefly on his encounter and his experience with Imam Al-Seppe.
As-Salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Nahmadu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. I think the more appropriate person to speak about Sheikh Isa Al-Seppe would be Yusuf Mohammadi. Part of his life, trained people like Isa. From our point of view, he was one of the few unique students that we have produced. And I've often wondered what made him unique. He was unique in himself, in the sense that he researched, he read like very few other people can read like him. He used to be a very good reader, and that shaped his life, gave him the impetus that he had, and made him to the person he was, an extremely exemplary person. A unique person, one who was very selfless, who cared a lot for community, died for dawah. I mean, if you can really call a da'i, he was an extremely exemplary example. And in many ways, he also epitomized his neighbor, original neighbor, Ghaid Umaruddin Don Matera. So he had also who had an impact on his life, and you could see this in this person. So from our point of view, we have produced many leaders, He's one of the few unique ones that stands out. The other thing that's very unique about him is that as a student, he went out. And when we had a crisis at As-Salam, when actually we had a mutiny, and we had to take the principal out and bring him out of As-Salam, he stepped in and became the principal and stayed there for 2 years. And not that he just stayed there and gave his service, but at the end of it, he gave us a memorandum of what As-Salam should be doing. It wasn't a very passive job. It was a very inactive job. He affected many people, and that was one of his strengths. That when you get to know him, he affects you. He was so, imbued in whatever he was doing. And we really respect him for that. If I say nothing more, I think that's my best that I can say. He stands out. He stands out in your memory. He challenged you. And he was not afraid of anybody. And if he saw anything wrong, he opened his mouth and he stated it, and he would back it up. And that was his strength. It changed many of us. It changed me. And for that, I'm very grateful.
Jazakallah khairan, Ghulam. So I'm going to deviate slightly from the program, and I'm going to take Dr. Ghulam's suggestion and ask Yusuf Mohammadi. I know it's impromptu, Yusuf. No, you have to. You probably were closest to him from many of us here today. So I know it's impromptu, but I'm going to ask you to say a few words. Since you were principal of As-Salam, you were involved in As-Salam, Southern Africa Dawah Movement, MYM, lots of different organizations. Mahmoud? Okay, just gather your thoughts, Yusuf, while I ask the next speaker. So the next speaker is going to be Mahmoud Amra, who will, obviously, he wanted to jump the gun. So Mahmoud is one of the founder members of the Islamic Forum, and Imam Seppe was very active in the Islamic Forum. Islamic Forum is a kind of offshoot of the Muslim Youth Movement and was very active at that time during the elections and played a very important role in voter registration, formation of Vision 2020. And Mahmoud was very active at that time. So Mahmoud will share with us some of his experiences with the Imam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My interaction with Imam Essa Al-Seppe was more towards the late 1990s and just around the 2000 before he passed away, when he joined the Islamic Forum, and he was quite comfortable with us, and also with the other organization. I'd like to thank Professor Suleman Dangor and Awqaf and Islamic Forum for putting this book together. And it's important that we take ownership of our heroes. Many people in the past have done tremendous work from our community, but the history is kind of dissolved or lost along the way. So if we don't take ownership of our heroes, we lose it. When Imam Al-Seppe used to come for our meetings that we used to have at Yusuf Patel's house, I was the chairman at that time, and during the meetings, you find that he used to raise sometimes awkward and uncomfortable positions. And we used to sort of find it difficult to sort of say, now, how do you respond to this kind of a thing? This is not the program that the Islamic Forum wants to pursue. And I used to take him back home after the meeting to Asherville. I never met you, Fazila. And we have another meeting in the car for another 1 hour or so, and head to head on certain points. And Imam was very sharp-minded, intellectual, and from this interaction, I gathered that his sincerity and his passion for Islam was so great that he wanted a rapid Muslim transition, like how you get the rapid economic transition movement. Isa was like that. He wants the Muslim community to change like now kind of a thing. And I used to say, how are we going to do a thing like that? We in the Islamic Forum, we're not the mainstream kind of a thing. And he used to have that this thing to say the Muslim community needs to become like the original Muslim community. And he had that ideal, which he was passionate about. He was very sincere about it. And it used to come out in those kind of conversations. Even in his conversations, I remember he was also very caring for his family. At one time he mentioned that, I don't know who's his son, but he says, I keep telling my son to make dua for the dentist who fixed his teeth. I don't know if the dentist passed away or what, but that kind of a thing. Or he should say, he raised, I think once in the meeting, that he wonders who will marry my Fatima. Is that right? I think Fatima did get married. Yeah, okay, alhamdulillah. And things like that he used to raise. And alhamdulillah, till his passing, he was with the Islamic Forum. It seemed like he found a home amongst us. It's just that we were not the mainstream thinkers kind of a thing, and not this thing, but our voices are getting heard. And I remember, and I cherish the memory, that the day when I went to visit him in the hospital with my late wife, Amina, that some kind of enthusiasm and joy that he had to see me coming over there, that he actually got off the bed kind of a thing to hug me, which previously in our meeting we sort of head to head, debating about something kind of. I never seen him smiling and so joyous and happy. So these are some of the short, good memories I had of him, and may Allah bless him and his family. As-Salam alaikum.
Yusuf, I think you've had a few minutes to reflect. So you can take your time and gather your thoughts while you speak. But I think it's an omission from our part not to have included you in the program. But I'm sure the Suleman and Zafar will agree that it's appropriate that you say a few words on this important occasion of celebrating the life of the Imam. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to be a part of this program, and I'd like to thank the chairperson for allowing me to say a few words. Imam Seppe, myself, and the family go back many, many years, especially when Imam was a student under me, with me at the As-Salam Institute. And he came in as a student, but from there he emerged as a leader. So while there at the Institute as a student, he's shown some remarkable and outstanding qualities. And as some of you have said, he was an avid reader. And from As-Salam, he emerged and thereafter joined several groups, several organizations, and played a great and unique role in the community. While going out on field work and touring the country, Imam was a colleague of mine, and we made many such trips in the country. I think Imam stood above his times, and he was a thinker and a leader above our times, and he had a vision, he had a foresight and a dream that we did not have. And I don't have much to say, but also at the same time, we would like to record the contribution that his wife, Fazila, has made. And from day one, she was at his side. She was on his side, supporting him. We ask Allah to bless the marhum and reward him for all the great work that he's done in the community. Shukran. As-Salamu Alaikum.
Jazakallah khairan, Yusuf, for those very kind words. We now have, as you've heard now, the Imam was a student at As-Salam and he rose to become student leader and eventually even principal. I think that was probably the fastest rise of any student at As-Salam. So we have a group of students from As-Salam who will now read a Nashid for us. So if you can please come in front and do the Nashid for us. You want to come to the front? Go this way. Oh, okay.
I want to be here. I want to stay. This is my home too. I want to be here. I want to stay. Palestine, Palestine will be free. Palestine, Palestine, Palestine will be free. Palestine, from the river to the sea. Palestine, 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 Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea. Palestine, 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 Palestine will be free. Free, free, Palestine, 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 Palestine will be free. Palestine is bleeding while the Muslim world is stealing deals. Well, there's quite no healing. Hospital bombed and children dead. It's silence again. Who cares if they stop breathing? Maybe if she could die 1,000 more times, then the silence to stop digging. Frustrated, guide her movement until lineage. Please note, her land is now fertile of crops, so you can start collecting. Oops, I forgot. You've been drinking her body for 70 years now, I count. You've been drinking her blood and filling your corridors with the tears. Speak the truth and shut the devil, they say poverty.
Those who spoke are still come from living. Lies and deceit supported by media truth is just us streaming. You was going to be saved, but you know selfishness is racing. Hold on, we're not divided, the scriptures are spoken by WAMI. We have chose to hold on to our world, let the Ummah drown in. Gaza is a plaza where Zionists keep shopping for their lives. For years being squeezed until life is dead knocking. I need the voices of the allies to tell me that I'm wrong. That they have done nothing but watching. Oh, Muslim world, where is your thunder voice for the voiceless? In the split of seconds, there she was homeless. Tell her how you have sold her children to the enemy. Tell her how you have mutilated her body, all in the name of wealth.
Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. When they need your help, orphans, hear them cry and wipe the tears. When they need your help.
Jazakallah khairan for that beautiful Nashid. So now, of course, the most important person for this function is Professor Suleman Dangor. All of you, I'm sure, know him, but for those that don't, he is an emeritus professor of Islamic studies at the then University of Durban, Westfield, now, of course, UKZN. So he's been commissioned by Awqaf South Africa to write this book celebrating the life of Imam Al-Seppe. And he's going to be our actually final speaker on the formal program. And then the floor is open for discussion and for comments from the floor. Professor Dangor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to all of you, especially Fazila Seppe's family and friends, and of course, the ulama here, and ladies and gentlemen. Okay, it's an honor for me to have written this book about Imam Essa, and for having been invited to this book launch. Now, it's been a long while that I've been contemplating write a book on Imam Essa Al-Seppe, and it was quite a few years later that eventually I decided, I told Faisal, listen, give me the documents and let me see what's there and whether we can actually produce a book. Now, I quite can't remember when I met him. I have no idea. But I interviewed him on radio and SAR at least on 3 occasions. So he didn't have a car, I used to go home and pick him up and then drop him. And then we used to sit and have a chat. And that's when I got to understand that this man has a vision, as well as articulate, is very spoken, articulate, very frank, but not bitter at all. Now, most people think he's colored, because obviously we're looking at complexion. Yeah, somebody said, well, he's very handsome. Yeah, always had the smile on his face. Those who know him well. Actually, his ancestry is Khoisan. It's Khoisan, right? So one of the parents is a Khoi, the other one is a son. And for this reason, he also, when he went to Namibia, he says he felt very much at home among the Khoisan people. And I think I'll just read what he was. Yeah. That when he got to Namibia, he felt very at home among the Namibian people. Now, what's important is when you are writing a book, you need 2 things. One is you need documents. And documents means newspaper articles, letters, brochures, books, and so on. And photographs as well. And then interviews. Now, in this particular case, I didn't have to do many interviews, just a few of them, because Fazila has very meticulously collected all the documents. She had 2 boxes full. And of course, it took a while to go through all of them. But Imam Isa was very, very particular. He preserved everything. The letters he wrote, the newspaper clippings. He actually wrote an autobiography, right? So a few pages. That's very important because you got knowledge about his personal life, where he studied, his parentage, his education, and so on. So very meticulously collected all this. And then, of course, there were over 100 photographs. And I sat down with Fazila and said, tell me who is in the photograph, where were the photographs taken, what was the occasion. And I must tell you, she has a remarkable memory. She would immediately tell you this was where, and these are the people in the photograph, and that was the occasion. And I tell you, that was really very, very helpful for me to be able to identify the people. Now, as far as the title is concerned, I was wrestling with what title I should give this book. And at one time, I was thinking about the unsung hero, which he is, by the way. But then I said, people don't know about him. So the best title would be to speak about Isa Al-Seppe and his life and times. Now, in KwaZulu-Natal, of course, also in the country, very few people know about him. Or they might have heard about him, but knew very little about him. Even I myself, although I had contact with him, I didn't know very much until I started going through the documents and I found, the information there was totally unknown outside his immediate circle. So it's very important to bring out that information because he was a man that basically was unheralded, unknown, not celebrated, not acknowledged, except by the few organizations that he worked for. And what's important that some of the people who are outside the country knew him, whereas people inside the country did not know him. Just to give an example, he was invited to a conference in Sudan by Hassan al-Turabi. And those of you who know the Islamic movement, Hassan al-Turabi was one of the leaders of the Islamic movement, and he actually got a personal invitation from Hassan al-Turabi. So he was well known outside of the country as well. Now, one of the issues that always troubled him was the issue of racism. And the reason is very simple, because his wife is of Indian origin. And so the kids, obviously, they would be called colored, because they're a mixture of Indian and, of course, Khoi. And so at school, they were mocked and ridiculed. And you know the community, Muslim community, I don't have to tell you about that. So when they see people of different complexion, curly hair, and so on. So I'm going to read here what Fazila actually said about this. She said, Imam Isa's wife complained about the racism her children had endured at a prominent Muslim school. Didn't want to mention the name of the school. They had been routinely teased about the hair and complexion, and her daughter claimed she was excluded by girls of Indian origin from their activities. So this racism played on his mind, and very often he spoke about the relationship between the dominant Indian Muslims and, of course, the emerging African Muslim sector. And every time I interviewed him on the radio, this always came up. And people would say, why is he always talking? I said, because that's his personal experience. It has his personal experience. It is very difficult to work within a community if your ethnicity is going to be a deciding factor of how people relate to you or to interact with you. Now, when it comes to the dawah, yes, he was a da'i, but he was not a normal da'i. His method of dawah was very, very different. And in fact, I got a whole chapter here. He's written a number of articles on dawah, the strategies of dawah. So I've got an article here where he talks about the methodology of dawah. And as I said, he's not the normal methodology which is followed. I'll just read to you what he says about dawah. Dawah work is carried out by real human concerns about the poor, the needy, women and children, and the unemployed and uneducated, about inequality, institutional and collective power. This symbolizes, in turn, dawah work with a human face and not a mechanical iron face or, at worst, a mask. So you can see his thinking about dawah was actually quite different. So although he was a da'i, he was not a da'i in normal sense of the word. And when he went to Namibia, actually, he got involved in politics. He was also, I'll talk about his politics in South Africa. At that time, it was Southwest Africa, and they were going through independence. And he became involved with SWAPO. So there's one photograph in the book, you'll see the flag of SWAPO in the background. And he became quite involved, and some people in South Africa were not very happy because they had sent him for dawah. Why was he meddling with politics there? I think I'll read one section here for you here. As a consequence of Imam Isa's visit to South Africa, a number of Muslim organizations decided to send a formal Muslim delegation to Windhoek as a display of solidarity with NIM, that is the Namibia Islamic Movement, the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO, and other progressive parties who were to participate in the UNTAG supervised election. So this was the time of the elections, and I think MYM, some of the people from MYM actually went across to Namibia. So you can see his activism. So not simply a da'i, he was also involved in politics. And then as far as media is concerned, I'm coming back to politics. He was at the time very critical of the establishment of the Africa Muslim Party. And I'll read to you what he actually says about the party. This actually has to do with what we call the marginalization of African Muslims. And that was basically one of his major concerns, the relationship because of the marginalization. So African Muslim Party actually symbolized the marginalization of the African Muslim. And this is what it says there. The AMP was launched in isolation without consultation with the broader Muslim community. The AMP will pick up wasted votes that otherwise would have gone to the liberation parties. A vote for the AMP was a wasted effort in the struggle for democracy. The AMP was hatched as an idea in seclusion and isolation. So he was very, very critical. There's a whole lot of pages about the AMP, especially because they did not actually involve the broader Muslim community. It means the African community as well. when they made that particular decision. He was also watching the media. There were many interviews with him, and so you have these clippings in among the documents that Fazila has preserved, where his statements are, recorded in those articles. And I'll read to you one of them. What he says about Western media. So a lot of things he actually spoke about and wrote about are relevant today. And this was 30 years ago, right? As Mahmoud Amra said, 1990s. There's a time he was writing and speaking about these matters. So what does he say about the Western media? The Western media often portray Islam as a religion of fanatics bent on converting the world through fear and destruction. Quite often, individuals such as Iraqi President Saddam Hussein, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, Palestinian Liberation Organization leader Yasser Arafat were portrayed by the media as religious fanatics, which serves as ideal anti-Islam propaganda in the West. And what is increasingly infuriating for Muslims throughout the world is the unchallenged perception of these views. It was common knowledge that the impact of the media, particularly the Western media, has had a tremendous influence on how people perceive the rest of the world. This is exactly what's happening now. You see with Palestine and Gaza. So he was a man actually who had a vision. He could see things ahead. And so a lot of things that we are grappling now, he was already talking about it at that time. And of course, talking about politics again and talking about the Western media, he also spoke about the Arab leadership. And this is what he has to say. And of course, all of us are known right now about the unwillingness of the Muslim leadership to get involved in what's happening in Palestine and Gaza. Everybody knows about it. And this is what he wrote about in the 1990s. He said, he described the Arab rulers as toys in the hands of the enemies of Islam. That is the Crusaders, the West, and Zionism. He mentioned the emergence of divisions among Muslims in Geneva since the Saudis sacked the Imam of the mosque, Sheikh Yusef Ibrahim, for criticizing the American crusade in the heart of Islamic territories. How contemporary is that? This is exactly what's happening today, right? Finally, he informed, okay, I'll just stop there. Then we go to the issue of unity. Now, although he was very critical of the relationship between Indian Muslims and Asian Muslim means Malay and Indian, of course. At the same time, he was not bitter. Because remember, his wife is from Indian origin. The organizations he worked for, As-Salam, IDM, Islamic Forum, all of them were headed by Indian Muslims. So obviously he couldn't be racist. But he was very concerned about this relationship. But he spoke about the importance of the unity of the Ummah, first of all. I'll just read the passage for you here. First of all, he says Islam is a yes, I should mention here that while he was at As-Salam, he came across Islamic movement literature. And that shaped his mind to some extent. And so you can see it coming through in his writings. So he says Islam is a comprehensive system of life which covers and offers guidance in all aspects of human activity. Right? Typical Islamic movement type of thinking, right? Then he says Muslims must work for cooperation and unity of Muslim peoples, communities, and institutions throughout the world to ensure that the Ummah will again assume its role of the leadership of mankind. And then, of course, it says the Ummah transcends all political, national, or ethnic organizational structures. So very much the Islamic movement type of thinking. Okay, I'm not going to tell you, you'll be surprised at how many qualifications he has. I was shocked when I looked through the documents and he never spoke about it. He was a very simple, down-to-earth, humble person. He has so many qualifications, unreal. And as Dr. Ghulam Hussain and Mahmoud and them said, he was an avid reader. And so, of course, he wrote many examinations. He has many qualifications. Also, what's interesting is that he has published something else, written something like 30 articles, but they were never published. And now I've been telling Awqaf they need to consider publishing them. He was a very good writer. If you read his articles, I've got 3 of them as appendices at in the book here. He was a brilliant writer, and he wrote on so many different subjects. And I think it's very important to publish that as a collection. And some of his writings were published, but not many. He was also, of course, he did his master's degree at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and before his death, he was actually planning to do his PhD. So he was an intellectual at one stage. He was a man of vision. He was very keen as a da'i as well, also concerned about the political situation in the country. Also fascinating, we look at his reach, he also had contact with Rabita. And amazingly, he actually wrote this. I'll tell you this here. Imam Isa wrote to Abdul Aziz Hamad of the World of Rabita, the Muslim World League, on the 2nd of May 2001, informing him that in response to a conversation they held in relation to the problems facing the emerging Muslim communities in the townships, he had drafted a document which he called Framework of Concepts, Models and Instruments to Facilitate Service Provisions by Muslim World League. Imam Isa offered his services as a resource person to the World Muslim League. Can you imagine? That's a level he reached. And of course, people recognize and acknowledge his knowledge. And as I say, unfortunately, in South Africa, as far as conferences are concerned, maybe I should end with this. Apart from invitation by Hassan Turabi, he also attended the conference in Tehran with Fatima Mir, I think Maulana Abdul Rauf Sufi. So he was there as well. All right, so I think maybe this might cover what I have covered in the book. Of course, there are certain issues I haven't spoken about, for instance, interfaith activities. He was involved in that as well. And he also wrote about the Tizaniya Tariqa. So he has some inclination toward Tasawwuf. And you'll see there's one photograph of me with at the what's called a daira. The Senegalese Muslims, they celebrate the return of the Sheikh after the French had exiled him. So every year on the day of his return, they have what's called a daira. It actually takes place the entire night. I mean, they start zikr and so on. And Imam Isa were invited. So there was a photograph with Fazila showed me, said, "Do you recognize these people?" I said, "Oh yeah, okay." So he had some inclination, of course, with Tasawwuf as well. So I think with these words, I will end, and hopefully I have quenched, no, not quenched. I have interested you in reading about Imam Isa, inshallah. The books are on sale. I think Tazkiyah is selling them for 100 Rand. I think it's worth the buy, inshallah. Jazakumullah. As-Salam.
Jazakallah khairan, Suleman. Food is on its way, so for those of you that are hungry, don't worry, you've been provided for. So now it's audience participation. And I think the first person from the audience that's going to say something is Sayyidun Isa, who had a close association with Imam Al-Seppe. Sayyidun Isa is a stalwart of the Islamic movement. She was a full-time office bearer of the Muslim Youth Movement and then involved in many other faith work and now Palestine solidarity work. So, Sayyidun, the floor is yours. You want to come to the front? No, come speak from here.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I want to echo Fazila's presentation and Rashad's, and I will continue from there. I hope all of you were listening to the two presentations. It's important that we honor Imam Al-Seppe. And I am very fortunate that I had the opportunity to travel with him to many places. And while we were on our way to Lesotho, Isa was not licensed and I was supposed to be driving down those hills. And he insisted that he's going to drive us because he knew the terrain very much. And Ibrahim Ahmad from Southern Africa Islamic Youth Conference was not happy, but we gave him the opportunity to drive. And he was very good in that. I was also very fortunate that I was part of the delegation that went to Namibia with Imam Rashid Umar, Naim Jina, and many of us were on that trip to meet with the Muslims in Namibia. And like it has been said, it was his home. But what was important is Isa and Fazila has given us the whole house. It was a 2-bedroom house. They pitched up a tent in the yard, and the ladies were in the house and the men slept in the tent. And that's when we met with SWAPO and other organizations. He was very, very interesting in bridging this divide between race. And I also had the opportunity to work with him with Religions for Peace, currently known as World Conference on Religions for Peace. And also Prof. Dangor was there before Isa and I. So we followed in Prof's footstep, bringing communities together. And during his trip, during our trip in Namibia, we were fortunate that we managed to meet with some SWAPO people, but we never managed to meet with the then leader there. So Isa encouraged us in the MYM to begin voter education, and we also, many of us from the MYM observed the first elections. And so he looked at how we're going to educate the adults, and UKZ and Howard College opened up an adult education course, and he tried to get many people. You didn't need a formal education to be there, but he managed to get lots of people to go there and see that how we can work in the townships, in the informal settlement, to part knowledge to these people. Here he was bringing dawah as well as formal education, and he really balanced his life. Last but not least, in all our training, we in the MYM had to go through a lot of training because there was change. And what will South Africa be after 1994 and the elections? So we went to Wits University to do change management. We went to Accord and lots of places and worked in partnership with Sanko and did lots of programs that we could implement as MYM in the whole country as well as in the township and rural areas. Last but not least, Isa encouraged me to join the University of Brighton. And we did a 1-month training in Johannesburg to look at how we can begin building our own country when we became a democracy. So we did a training a while back during apartheid, but changes were taking place. And we just continued. We did the elections and we observed it. And I decided I've given enough time to the MYM and I want to step down. And in January of 1994, I resigned from the Muslim Youth Movement. And at the end of that month, I got an acceptance to Brighton University. And from the time of acceptance until I went to in April when I went to Brighton, Isa mentored me. And so we always hold the MYM, and I call myself a cadre because I continue in the footstep of the Islamic movement. We learn from lots of scholars. But it's just so, coming together. Ahmed mentioned we are painting South Africa with Palestine mural. And we just decided that tomorrow we are painting Fazila's wall in Clear Estate. So everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of providers, He's the best of planners. And if we can hold on to Deen of Islam in whatever field we do, wherever we are, let us be the Muslims that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be, and Rasulullah's footstep that we should follow. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah Sayyidun Isa for that personal account of your relationship with Imam Seppe. So the floor is now open for discussion. We have about maybe 5 or 7 minutes left. Suleman? Betty. Betty, it's a recording. Oh, she's here. Betty? I'm not sure who you are, Betty, so you may have to introduce yourself. Okay, sorry about that.
Apology accepted. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Betty Aluteni. I'm a Namibian, but I'm now based in South Africa, married here and living here. I am a non-Muslim. I got to know the family 35 years ago. I was still a very young child. Auntie Fasila asked me to come and talk on, to say something about Uncle Isa. To us, he was Uncle Isa because he was our neighbor. When they came to Namibia in 1989, it was a period of many firsts for me as a child. It was the year that Namibia was going through a transition period from the apartheid era of South Africa, being governed by the South African apartheid government. And it was the year that we were having our very first elections as a democratic election. As I said, that the family were our neighbors, and as a girl child, I had very minimal interactions with Uncle Isa. My father was a teacher, and probably 80 to 90% of the Namibian cabinet, first cabinet and parliamentarians were taught by my father. So he was a highly respected educator, and in as much as we are not Muslims, Uncle Isa liked coming to our house because they would engage in very interesting discussions that related to religion, because my father was a staunch Christian, and they will also talk a lot of politics. If I say that almost 90% of the cabinet was taught by my father, then you will have an understanding of the level of relationship he had with the politicians back home. When I said that it was a number of firsts for me, it was my first time also being exposed to the Islamic faith. It's something that we had not really encountered in Namibia. I don't know whether they were Muslims, but we were not aware of them at that time, or personally myself. And it was also a first for me to see a person of Indian descent in the form of Auntie Fasila. Their home was the center where the people who worked for the UN. Our first elections were run by the UN. There was the United Nations Transition Assistance Group. They sent delegates from various countries, and the Muslim UNTAG members used to gather at their house as opposed to practice their faith. And then there was this one incident where I regret, actually, my father is late now. He died during the period of COVID, but not from COVID. I regret asking him, because there's this one time that Uncle Isa invited him, because they used to talk a lot about religion. So there is an UNTAG member who passed, and my father was invited to come and see the processes of how you prepare a body for burial. And as an Oshiwambo person, Oshiwambo men are terrified of corpses. So it was a very traumatic experience for my father. Uncle Isa was a very warm, very kind person. We as a family, we really loved the family. My mom was an accomplished cook, and Auntie Fasila, for those who know her, will know that she is a cook of note. So our kitchen was because my mom had basically all the tools, and our kitchen was an extension of her kitchen. She just used to come in there, take whatever and go. So that's how close our families were. The family returned to South Africa, I think in 1990 or 1991, and then we lost contact. It wasn't the period of the convenience of the cell phone, so we lost total contact. And then I came to study in South Africa, in Durban specifically, and in my final year of my second degree, I was going up the escalator at Victoria Market, and there was this man coming down, and when we met, we both turned. It was like a scene from a movie, and when we turned, then it was like, Betty, and I was like, Uncle Isa, and that's how the families were again reconnected till this day. I only have my in-laws as family here in South Africa, and I always say that my Namibian family in South Africa is Auntie Fasila. I end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty, for that fascinating account. Very interesting. You can see that Imam Isa touched many lives, and through his warmthness and generosity, he left a footprint wherever he left. So now the floor is open for any discussions, any questions. I'm sure most of you can smell the food, and you can't wait to get your hands onto it. So any discussion? If anybody wants to say anything or anybody that we've left out of the program mistakenly, that would like to say a few things. Sheikh, did you know Imam Isa? Okay. Does anybody else want to add anything? If not, then I'm going to ask. It's a vote of thanks. I'd like to thank the Awqaf South Africa for partnering with Islamic Forum to host this meeting. Of course, the sisters of the Islamic Forum, Mariam Amra, my wife, Mariam Motala, Yusef Desai from Country Bake for organizing the meals. And of course, I want to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making it possible for us to meet here today. And of course, all of you for taking time out and spending time with us to come and listen about this remarkable individual. Ibrahim Dada, you had some association with him. Maybe you should say a few things. Yeah, so maybe just tell us a few things about your experience with him, with IDM. I think that's an important, a part of his life, because Dawah was very, and it's sort of integral part of Imam Seppe's life. Okay.
The only one thing that comes out very clear, that mentioned by Yusef Osman and many others, you see, in our 47-year history of IBM, I've had dozens, maybe going to hundreds of da'is coming and going. And Isa was one of them. But he wasn't a da'i, he was a director. And the one thing that stood out with him was that he was different from all others, and I'm not exaggerating here, in the sense that, as you've heard many others say, he saw Islam holistically, and this struck a chord with me personally and with us in the movement. He had a broad vision in life, and he was educated, which most of the other guys were not, in a very comprehensive way, as you have mentioned, and Suleman Dangor mentioned all the degrees and all the reading. Yusef Osman mentioned that he used to read a lot. So that came out to me quite openly, and I should say that struck a chord with me. And he was interested in politics as a whole, and that issue about the racial thing struck out with him. But unlike many others that I've met in the township, he wasn't antagonistic. He was always trying with me also and with others to find a way where the people who were sitting in the center were trying to make the others in the extreme see the way and start a new ummah in South Africa. So that really came out quite strong with Isa, and I'm grateful for that experience I had with him and with Sister Fazila. As Yusuf said, when they were getting married, which I had forgotten, the bride house was my home, and from the groom's house, and from there we went to the marriage IDM center.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
One of the IDM weddings that we had.
So that's quite memorable. Jazakallah, Ibrahim. Maulana Said, you're going to have the last say and you're going to make the dua, okay?
My name is Said from Hadi, as well as Prof.
No, come here.
Okay, no, shukran. I'm Said. I made Salam already. I'm from Harding. I was invited by Dr. Saab as well as Professor Saab. We are close friends, and alhamdulillah, and then I take advices, quite a lot of advice from Professor Dangor. And actually, most of what has been presented here, to me, it's like an atomic bomb. It's like an explosion. It's first time to hear about the Imam. I didn't know that in South Africa we had such a great Imam of his kind. I normally visit the graveyard. My Ustaz Mufti Ibrahim Desai is there. So now, beside all the marhumin that are there, I'll make special intention whenever I visit them. I also visit the Imam's grave, inshallah, whenever I'm in Durban. But from my side, I really want to appreciate everyone who made it possible for the book to this thing to be written and also published. But I just have an opinion that just not only the book, I would love that if it's possible, that maybe we can say an institution of leadership of some sort, if it can be established, created in a building of this nature where leaders will be produced from there, or maybe whether it's in As-Salam or wherever, whether there's space, but where there can be the Imam's life and his vision. Since you said he was in politics, myself, I'm a politician. I'm sure some of you know that I'm in politics. I'm leading a political party called the Sun Party. Also, whether in Da'wah, this great vision that Imam has, I really feel that an institution should be created, not just only the book, and where leaders of his caliber should be produced from the institution, inshallah. So that's my closing this thing. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Can we all, inshallah, just read Qul Wallahu Ahad on behalf of the Imam, inshallah, just once, then we'll make the dua, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر كبيرا الحمد لله كثيرا سبحان الله وتعالى. اللهم عند السلام ومنك السلام وعليك عند السلام. فإن ربنا بالسلام ودخلنا جنة دار السلام. تبارك ربنا وتعالى أهل الجلال الكرام. اللهم أيد الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر المجاهدين في كل مكان. اللهم انصر الإخوان في فلسطين خصوصا في غزة يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصرهم ولا تنصر عليهم. اللهم ارحم موتاهم. اللهم ارحم موتاهم. اللهم ارحم موتاهم وشهداهم. اللهم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. اللهم ربنا اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. اللهم ربنا اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك يا رفيقا. Oh Allah, we thank you for this gathering, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we ask you, Allah, to please forgive us, Ya Allah. Forgive all our sins, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Forgive our shortcomings, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Forgive the Marhum Al-Imam Essa Al-Seppe, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and all the Marhumin, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Allah, give him the highest stages in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and all our Asatiz, our ulama who have left us, Ya Rabbal Alameen, give them the highest stages in Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Allah, accept us, Ya Rabbal Alameen, make us the true ambassadors of Deen, the true ambassadors of Da'wah, and Ya Rabbal Alameen, make us good examples wherever we go, Ya Rabbal Alameen, to attract the people of this country into Islam through our actions, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Allah, accept us, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى سيدنا مولانا محمد أصحابه وبارك وسلم. اللهم إنا نسألك من كل خير ما سعدك من حنبك وحبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من كل شر ما استعاذك من حنبك وحبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان ولك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. جزا الله عنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم له. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Please enjoy your meals, help yourselves. We have prepared quite a bit of food, so please enjoy your food. Thank you. Jazakallah khairan.